there were all kinds of vendors there that you could go to, various organizations that may be at least loosely, if not directly affiliated with the state Republican Party. They may not be directly affiliated, but certainly the causes that they champion are certainly in line with what we have. I did find it kind of interesting. I spoke to one of the Right to Life committees. As I've said before individually and publicly, that's an issue that's always been very near and dear to my life, but to my heart. But I've also often wondered there, they had two separate booths separated across the rooms. There was the Texas Right to Life, which I've supported, and then there was the Texas Alliance for Life, if I remember correctly. I couldn't tell 2 cents difference between the two of them and wondered why they didn't kind of combine their efforts to make an even greater impact. And in fact, I asked, it was the Texas Right to Life fellow, I asked him what the difference was between his organization and the other, and he just simply said, you know, I'm not real sure. I'm thinking, well, how about getting together and let's pool our resources? I thought that might be a good idea. But there were various organizations there as well. This Tea Party that has just blossomed over the last year and a half was very evident. Their presence was very evident. And I think their presence was probably felt the most in the election for the state party chairman, but I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit. On Friday afternoon, after we had the first General Assembly, we all of the folks basically were dispatched to their respective Senate District Committee meetings. And even there, much of what we did was kind of already determined. John and his current, whose name I forget, that it has to be by design, by the way, a male and a female. And John and his counterpart, the lady who now is running for state rep, based on their work throughout the district, had some recommendations that they would propose out there for the various committees. Now, still, they had to be nominated and seconded. Just like Evelyn once told me, it really is good to know the Robert's Rules of Order, which aren't as complicated as you might think they are. But I don't think there were any serious contests among the kind of appointed, if you will, committee spots. People who'd been serving in those capacities were generally not reappointed, I should say, but recommended to run for office. Nominations would cease, and we would vote them all in. And it seemed like those people were all doing a great job. They would give reports of what had been going on. And so all I would say about that kind of stuff, and that is whether if you wanted to be involved, for instance, in helping to write the party platform, or helping with grassroots, so forth, is in the same exact way that many people are getting involved at our local level, at the county level. For instance, I'm now a Precinct 4A chairman and getting some training materials and trying to get involved at that level, is if you're interested in having an actual impact on the Senate district level, which will impact the state level, you just need to kind of learn to, meet John Cook, get to know John Cook, tell John Cook you're interested in doing something like that, and he's going to find a place for you to serve. And at some point, I suspect, the next time we have the convention, which would be in 2 years, you're going to probably be a bigger player in that regard if you would like to. But we got to all sit together. All the counties would sit together, both in the General Assembly as well as in our Senate districts. And I just found that to be just kind of interesting. Nothing, in my mind, significant happened during that day that was out of the ordinary. Everything seemed to be routine, and it really was just kind of rubber stamped, if you will. Most of the work that had gotten to that point had been done long before we got there. But the next day, the thing that you saw was that there was a pretty hotly contested race for the state chairman. Now, what happened, of course, just to give you some background, if you remember, our state chairman resigned last November, as best I remember, maybe it was October, last fall anyway, and resigned her position so that she might take up and run Rick Perry's campaign. Now, you'll recall that last fall, Rick was in just a big heat with Kay Bailey Hutchison for the Republican convention, Republican candidacy for governor. And she resigned that position. Well, under state law, it's not a Republican rule. Under state law, if the chairman is a woman, then the vice chairman must be a man. And that's fine. And vice versa, by the way. What did not make sense to me is that if the chairman resigns, why the vice chairman doesn't ascend to that position, in which case there would have been, and I probably should have prepared, I apologize. I was very impressed with this man. The man who was our vice chairman, Dr. Robin Armstrong, physician down in the Woodlands area, as best I remember. Powerful man, African-American man, very articulate, very passionate about what he does. Why he would not have then become the state chairman, I still have not understood. Any other position I've ever known, president resigns or whatever, the vice president becomes. If the governor ceases to be governor, the lieutenant governor becomes governor, and then you seek it to replace the lieutenant governor. I'm not sure why he didn't. Well, what happened is a long, stalwart, in the trenches lady named Kathy Adams was appointed by the State Republican Executive Committee to fulfill the remaining term of our state chairman. So then Kathy decided to run for a full term on her own. She completed the term of the outgoing chairman. And she was contested by two different men, both of whose names escape me. You probably, just like I did, were inundated with campaign, particularly if you were either listed as a delegate or an alternate to the convention. You probably got all kinds of mail from Kathy Adams and from the two gentlemen that were Steve Minicheri, who ultimately just, and Tom Mexler. Everybody had their own unique credentials of how they had been working in the party. Steve Minicheri, had been working for years. He worked on Reagan's campaign. He'd done kind of his own thing. He was a successful attorney. I think he was somewhat retired. He'd worked at various levels along the way. Kathy Adams was very impressive. Used to run, as best I remember, the Texas Eagle Forum, and had just a great Republican pedigree. Mexler was also, he was kind of more down in the trenches from the Panhandle area, and it was kind of interesting to see how all this worked. Well, the first bit of that all happened on Saturday, and I'm still a little bit of at a loss of how all that worked. But within we met Saturday morning first to start the day off in our Senate districts, and it was there that each Senate district would vote to who they wanted to be the state chairman, and all three were nominated inside our state chairman. Inside our Senate district, all three chairman candidates were nominated. And there was some time given for speeches in support of all three of those. And as best I remember, those of you who are present, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it may have taken more than one vote for us to finally get a majority in favor of Kathy Adams. And frankly, I didn't think that would be the case. It appeared pretty solid for Senate District 2, I thought, that Kathy Adams would win that. And ultimately, she was our district's nominee. However, once we got to the General Convention and there was some moving and shaking going on as they tallied votes, none of the three received the majority. And it was clear that it was going to be between Minicheri and Kathy Adams. And I'm trying to remember, I want to say that Minicheri may have had a slight lead of the three candidates, but then what Mexler did, he was nominated. And then Mexler actually threw his support behind Minicheri, which brought his whole block of folks over. And then while he was nominated for the floor, there were it basically, through Robert's Rules of Orders and so forth, it came to all of the delegates on the floor voting between Kathy Adams and Steve Minicheri. And this was interesting as well, because then we got to actually have the candidates come out and give a speech, and it was quite a production, by the way, with music. If you ever watched any of the Rocky movies, every time Kathy Adams would come out on stage, the Eye of the Tiger song from Rocky III would play every time she came out. which was always an interesting, because I have a feeling she probably was a bit of a bulldog, but her appearance just belied that. She would come out there with this beautiful, almost Queen of England kind of thing with this Eye of the Tiger music pumping out, and it was kind of a bit confusing. Well, they, just like we'd had in the Senate, in our district caucuses, they were given, I forget, 10 to 15 minutes per side to have as many people as they chose to bring out there and speak in support of them. And of course, they didn't just take Johnny off the street. They had some pretty heavy hitters. Kathy Adams and this Robin Armstrong were running as a ticket, because remember, of course, if you had a woman win, then it had to be a man as the vice president.